Robert Middleton, known as Robbie, was born on June 28, 1990, in Splendora, Texas, to a loving family composed of his parents, Bobby and Colleen, and his older sister, Heather. The Middletons lived in a rural area where everyone knew each other. The neighborhood children often ran around unsupervised, riding bikes, swimming, and playing together. Robbie was well liked by all. He was described as a friendly, cheerful, curious, and affectionate child who always maintained a positive attitude. He loved outdoor activities, especially in the company of his family and friends. Fishing was one of his favorite pastimes, but what he enjoyed the most was camping. He dreamed of owning his own tent so he could camp with his friends, and when he turned 8, his parents decided to make that dream come true. What started as the best day of his life tragically became the worst. On June 28, 1998, the day began with joy for the Middleton family. When Robbie woke up, his parents showered him with love and presented him with 2 gifts, a large box and an envelope. Robbie was overjoyed when he opened the box and found the tent he had been dreaming of. He thanked his parents for the surprise and eagerly opened the envelope, which contained a considerable amount of money for an 8-year-old. Ecstatic, Robbie told his parents that he wanted to use the gifts to celebrate his birthday with his best friend, Alberto Padilla, affectionately known as Beto. He asked his mother if he could have a sleepover in the backyard and use the money to buy fireworks for the celebration. His parents happily gave him permission. His parents granted him permission and even accompanied him to the mall to buy the fireworks and pick up some groceries. Robbie's mother had planned to prepare a variety of snacks, along with a cake for the celebration. After the shopping trip, Robbie eagerly waited until sunset to go pick up his friend, who lived in a nearby community across the way. Although the path to his friend's house was remote, Robbie was used to walking through the area, which had never posed any danger to him until that day. As he ventured into the woods, about 20 feet in, Robbie was brutally attacked. He was tied to a tree with fishing line, doused in gasoline, and set on fire, leaving him engulfed in flames within seconds. His agonizing screams pierced the air, but there was no one around to hear him. Ironically, it was this immense pain that would ultimately save his life, keeping him conscious and preventing him from passing out. Despite the intense suffering, when the fishing line that bound him to the tree snapped, Robbie, still ablaze, managed to free himself. With the last of his strength, the young boy crawled toward the road near his house, where his parents were anxiously awaiting his return to celebrate his birthday with his friend. Chad and Laura Thomason, a couple who were on their way home, spotted Robbie stumbling out of the woods. At first they thought he was naked and covered in mud, but as they approached, they were horrified to discover that his body was not muddy. It was still smoking and reeking of gasoline. His skin was melting, and his hair, eyelids, lips, and genitals were completely burned. Chad noticed a column of smoke rising from the woods. Without hesitation, he rushed down the trail to ensure that the fire was no longer spreading. About 100 meters from the road, he found the charred remnants of a small tree, which had been consumed by the flames. The ground was soaked with gasoline, and the smell of fuel lingered heavily in the air. Scorched patches and scattered clothing traced the path Robbie had taken as he fought to make his way home. Robbie, in unbearable pain, kept repeating, "I can't see, I'm cold, I'm thirsty." Robbie, cold and thirsty, was soon surrounded by concerned neighbors who brought him water, blankets, and ice. However, Chad, an experienced deep-sea diver, quickly warned them not to touch Robbie or give him anything to drink, as it could worsen his condition. While some residents tried to offer aid, Robbie's parents began to worry about his unusual tardiness. Their concern quickly turned into panic when they saw a group of people at the end of the street frantically calling for help. Instinctively, they rushed over, only to be met with a horrifying sight: a child, covered in burns, still smoldering, with his skin peeling off in pieces. As they moved closer, Robbie's father recognized the red slippers his son had been wearing that day. It was then that the horrifying reality hit him: this burned boy was his son. In shock, they asked Robbie what had happened, whether it was an accident or if someone had hurt him. At first, the little boy struggled to speak, but eventually he whispered the name Rex Taylor, identifying the person who had thrown gasoline in his face. Paramedics arrived shortly after, rushing Robbie to a hospital in Houston. However, due to the severity of his injuries, he was quickly transferred to a specialized medical center in Galveston. There, doctors delivered devastating news to Robbie's parents: their son had sustained third-degree burns over 99% of his body, leaving him with a slim chance of survival. Robbie was immediately taken into surgery, where doctors worked to remove the burned skin and begin the process of grafting lab-grown skin. The only part of his body that had not been burned was a small patch on the sole of his right foot, from which doctors extracted samples to cultivate thousands of skin grafts. Against all odds, Robbie survived, though he was left severely disfigured. His life became a relentless journey through hospitals and surgeries. The investigation into the attack began the following day. Detectives, guided only by Robbie's faint statements and the accounts of neighbors, focused their attention on a teenager named Rex Taylor, who lived on the same street as Robbie. However, Rex claimed that at the time of the incident, he had been swimming in the river with 3 friends. Both Rex and the other boys fully cooperated with the investigation, and after thorough inquiries, detectives ruled Rex out as a suspect. With no further leads, the police found themselves at a dead end until a new suspect emerged. The new suspect was Donald Werb Collins, a troubled 13-year-old with a bad reputation and a dark history. Born in 1985, little is known about his early life, except that his mother died when he was just 8 years old. Following her death, Donald went to live with his father, from whom he adopted harmful habits such as drinking alcohol and smoking marijuana. When his father was eventually imprisoned, Donald began bouncing between the homes of various relatives until he finally settled with his maternal aunt and uncle, who lived in the same neighborhood as Robbie's family. Donald was notorious for mistreating animals and bullying younger children, which is why no parents in the neighborhood allowed their kids to play with him. While Robbie was beloved by everyone, Donald was isolated, had no friends his own age, and often stalked younger children, especially those he was jealous of. Detectives began to suspect Donald after seeing him on television, where he had given several unsolicited interviews about the case. In these impromptu statements to 2 different news channels, Donald speculated that Rex was responsible for burning Robbie and contradicted Rex's alibi, saying the boy hadn't been swimming in the river, as he claimed. While talking to reporters, Donald revealed details about what happened in the woods, specifics that only someone present at the scene could have known. He also mentioned that he had been playing with gasoline and had burned his hand, even admitting that he was haunted by nightmares about what he had witnessed. He recounted with eerie precision how long it took Robbie to escape the woods, which matched the accounts of the neighbors who had helped the boy. As detectives dug deeper, they discovered that Donald had collected and saved pieces of Robbie's burned clothing, which he eventually turned over to the police in what seemed like an attempt to assist the investigation. On July 31, 1998, despite warnings from Robbie's doctors, the investigation took a decisive turn. The detectives met with Donald and his mother at the hospital, where they conducted an audio-taped interview. Robbie, still recovering, told the police that he hadn't seen anyone during the attack because he had been ambushed. He recalled seeing a piece of paper, a jug, and some dogs, and hearing the slam of a car door just before he was set on fire. Despite the confusion, Robbie recognized Donald's voice during the attack and also heard the voice of an older boy, although he couldn't identify who it was. At the time of the interview, Robbie was under the influence of heavy painkillers and anxiolytics, which affected his clarity. A few days later, officers spoke with Robbie's mother, who revealed that her son had mentioned 4 boys as the ones responsible, providing vague details of what they had allegedly done to him. However, she later clarified that the incident her son referred to had actually taken place a year before and not at the time of the attack. The police, nevertheless, remained determined to pursue the case. A few days later, the lead detective again spoke with Robbie's mother, who now claimed her son had directly accused Donald of burning him. Nurses who were present overheard Robbie whisper, "Yes," when his mother asked if Donald was the one who had done this to him. With this new revelation, the detectives obtained a juvenile warrant for Donald's arrest on charges of aggravated assault. During his interrogation, Donald admitted his involvement in the attack on Robbie. While detained in a juvenile detention center, he reportedly threatened 3 other juveniles, telling them he would burn them just as he had burned Robbie. The 3 boys informed custody officers, who immediately contacted the detectives working on the case. According to the testimony of one of the teens, Donald confided that he had burned Robbie because he believed that Robbie and his uncle had sexually abused him, and he feared that Robbie would tell his parents. Donald also confided in the same boy that he found it amusing, commenting on how Robbie's eyes looked after setting him on fire, as if they were about to pop out of his head. Although the police were eager to build a solid case against Donald and bring him to trial, the prosecution eventually dismissed the charges. In January 2000, Donald was released. Prosecutors were concerned about Robbies' inconsistent statements to the police, noting that his mind had not been lucid due to the high dosage of medication he was taking at the time. Despite the family's persistent efforts to keep the investigation alive, progress stalled for the next 13 years. During this time, Robbies' life became a relentless struggle. He spent a significant amount of time in hospitals, enduring more than 50 surgeries and numerous painful treatments. Yet his spirit remained unbroken. With the unwavering support of his family, Robbie became a symbol of resilience and courage. Little by little, he reintegrated into daily life and returned to school, where he was occasionally teased by some classmates because of his appearance. However, his fighting spirit earned him many sympathetic friends. At just 8 years old, Robbie displayed courage beyond his years. But his concern extended beyond himself. He spent time with other burn victims and became a passionate advocate for their cause. Robbie spent time with other burn victims and became a passionate advocate for their cause. He began raising funds for both research and to help those who had experienced the same tragedy he had and could not afford their surgeries. His compassion and dedication served as a reminder of what truly mattered in life. While Robbie was becoming an example to many, Donald chose a life of crime. In 2001, at the age of 16, he was convicted of sexually assaulting a child under the age of 8. For this reason, he spent 4 years in prison. After that, his life became a cycle of constantly going in and out of incarceration until he was finally locked up for failing to register as a sex offender. Robbie never doubted that Donald was responsible for his tragedy. In 2010, Robbie's family decided to file a civil suit for attempted murder against Donald, seeking justice and accountability for his actions. They saw a glimmer of hope when they enlisted the help of Siko, a plaintiff's attorney who assisted them in filing the lawsuit. The lawyer's strategy involved obtaining a copy of the police report to explore the possibility of reopening the criminal case. This effort allowed him to access the file from the 1998 investigation, where he took statements from one of the officers in charge, as well as from Robbie's treating physicians and 2 nurses at the hospital where he was treated. During the civil proceedings, Robbie's health deteriorated significantly. Despite his struggle with the aftermath of the attack, he had been diagnosed with skin cancer, which ultimately claimed his life on April 29, 2011. However, in a final act of bravery, he recorded a 27-minute video on his deathbed, in which he revealed the complete truth about what had transpired that fateful afternoon. In the tape, the boy not only recounted in detail how Donald had set him on fire, but also disclosed something he had kept secret until that moment. He revealed that, weeks before the incident, Donald had taken him to the same forest, where he had sexually abused him. He stated that he did it because he had witnessed Donald abusing another 8-year-old boy. On the day of the attack, when Donald set him on fire, Robbie thought he heard the voice of an adult in the forest. After recording these statements, Robbie departed from this world. Days later, dozens of people attended his funeral to support his family and bid him a final farewell. While Robbie's relatives grappled with the pain of his loss, the lawyer continued to advance the civil lawsuit, incorporating the videotape of Robbie's statement, which had been recorded just 17 days before his death. Meanwhile, Donald, who was in prison at the time for failing to register as a sex offender. Donald was released on September 5, 2011, after serving his sentence. 3 months later, in December of the same year, the civil trial was held. After hearing Robbie's testimony in the video, the jury symbolically awarded the family more than $150 billion in damages, making it the largest civil verdict ever awarded in U.S. history. Although the family knew they would not receive that amount of money, they considered the verdict a declaration of justice for Robbie. Following the civil trial, the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office and the Prosecutor's Office reopened the investigation based on the forensic report, ruling Robbie's death a homicide and resuming work on the case. However, the task was not easy. The new process involved more than 200 witness interviews, cooperation from multiple law enforcement agencies, and the expertise of medical professionals. The detective leading the case re-interviewed all previous witnesses and located others who had not come forward. Among those located was Donald's cousin, who testified that on the night Robbie was burned, She was sleeping with Donald on the living room couch when he confessed to tying the little boy to a tree with fishing line, pouring gasoline on him, and setting him on fire. A young woman recounted that when she shared with another family member what Donald had told her, he responded that the adults would take care of it. The case presented numerous legal issues and the challenges typical of a 17-year-old case. Nevertheless, all parties involved were committed to ensuring that justice was served for Robbie and his family and to preventing Donald from being released again. In 2012, the then county attorney requested an opinion from then Attorney General Greg Abbott regarding whether Donald could be certified to stand trial as an adult. In his ruling, Greg Abbott stated only that prosecutors had the discretion to determine whether to prosecute juveniles as adults, but he did not provide an opinion on Donald's specific case. They decided to pursue Donald's prosecution as an adult based on a new Texas state law passed in 1999. Until that time, the maximum age for certifying a juvenile as an adult was 14 years old, but the new law lowered it to 10. The prosecutor argued that since Robbie died in 2011, the lower certification age applied to Donald. However, Donald's defense attorney contended that the adult certification was not legal because the law had changed a year after the attack, claiming that Donald should only be held accountable under the laws in effect in 1998. During the certification hearing, several witnesses testified about Donald's confession, in which he admitted to burning Robbie. The prosecution also relied on the forensic report, which confirmed that the cause of the child's death was due to the injuries inflicted during the attack and that his death was classified as a homicide. The judge reviewed the petition and ultimately determined that Donald could be certified as an adult and tried for capital murder or manslaughter. Following that decision, the case was transferred to the district attorney's office. Due to the extensive media coverage the case had received in and around Guma County, not only in 1998, when the events occurred, but also during the civil trial and the certification hearing, Donald's defense filed a motion to transfer the trial to a different location, arguing that the media attention could compromise the impartiality of the jury. The judge approved the request, and the case was transferred to another county, presenting logistical challenges for the prosecution. Most of its witnesses, numbering around 40, were low-income individuals who could not afford to miss work, lacked transportation, and had no means to cover travel expenses. Additionally, the prosecution faced another hurdle. 10 of the witnesses were teenagers who had been detained with Donald at the juvenile center in 1998, and by the time the trial was set to occur, they were incarcerated in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. Despite these inconveniences, the trial against Donald, charged with capital murder, commenced in 2015. Due to the extensive and complicated nature of the case, prosecutors decided against a linear and chronological presentation and opted to begin with the testimony of Robbie's treating physician, who spoke about Robbie's injuries, mental state, and cause of death. The first witness for the prosecution was Robbie's physician, who not only testified about the extraordinary efforts made to prolong the young man's life, but also detailed Robbie's mental state during and immediately after the attack, as well as in the months that followed. At a pretrial hearing, the judge had excluded Donald's confession, in which he admitted to attacking Robbie, based on a defense motion to suppress it. As a result, prosecutors sought a way for Robbie to inform the jury that the defendant was responsible for his injuries, but they utilized Robbie's recorded statement, which was essential to the case, as it established that Donald had assaulted him in retaliation for concealing sexual abuse against him. The jury watched the video of Robbie, who appeared extremely weak and could barely speak, as he testified that the defendant had set him on fire after sexually assaulting him a few weeks prior. For the prosecutor, it was evident that Donald's motivations for burning Robbie were to silence him and cover up his sexual abuse. Although Robbie stated that he believed he heard the voice of an adult in the woods during the attack, the authorities were unable to prove the presence of another person at the scene. The 12 members of the jury watched in disbelief as the video of a dying Robbie played, revealing his confession. Meanwhile, Donald turned his back to the projection screen, reading a newspaper while the tape aired. After it concluded, Donald's defense team claimed that the prosecution was manipulating the jury's emotions, arguing that there were no witnesses to the attack. In the midst of the proceedings, the prosecution called Donald's cousin to the stand. She testified that the defendant had confessed to her about attacking Robbie. Additionally, several youths who had been detained with Donald at the juvenile center were summoned to testify. The youths who had been detained with Donald at the Juvenile Detention Center in 1998 all testified about the confessions he made while in custody. Prosecutors emphasized that Donald had not only sexually assaulted Robbie, but had also attacked a 6-year-old girl at a swimming pool after the incident, as well as another 8-year-old boy. He was notorious in the community for harming animals, including one of Robbie's sister's cats. After hearing the closing arguments from both sides and deliberating for 4 hours, on February 9, 2015, the jury, composed of 7 women and 5 men, found 29-year-old Donald Collins guilty of capital murder. Donald showed no emotion upon hearing the verdict, and his lawyer stated he was not surprised by the announcement. In contrast, Robbie's mother expressed that her son would have been very pleased with the outcome, knowing that Donald would never harm another child. During the penalty phase of the trial, Colin was called to the stand to discuss her son and all that their family had endured over the past 17 years. Notably, during this phase, the defense did not subpoena any witnesses, as it was revealed that Donald's legal representatives had communicated with members of his family. Family members decided against presenting their testimony, believing it could be prejudicial to the case. After an hour of deliberation, the jury sentenced Donald to 40 years in prison but could not impose the death penalty, as he had been a minor at the time of the events. The official sentence was handed down by a judge who ordered Donald to be transferred to the Texas Department of Criminal Justice to serve his sentence. Although the sentence ensured that Donald would be incarcerated for many years, Robbie's family felt it was insufficient compared to the unimaginable and horrific injuries he had suffered, the pain and suffering he endured throughout his life, and the devastation experienced by his entire family. The prosecutors and investigators involved in the case were pleased with the sentence, as it represented a long-awaited measure of justice after 17 years. In contrast, Donald's defense attorney argued that a 40-year sentence was excessively harsh and filed an appeal, claiming that the trial court's decision to try Donald as an adult for a crime committed while he was a juvenile violated his rights. The defense asserted that the prosecution relied solely on circumstantial evidence, lacking any physical evidence or eyewitnesses to substantiate that Donald was responsible for the attack, let alone the alleged sexual abuse against Robbie. When questioned by journalists about the mysterious adult allegedly present in the woods during Robbie's attack, Donald claimed he had no knowledge of this person, despite the defense's arguments. 3 state appeals courts upheld the initial conviction, with the latest rejection occurring in October 2017. With all state appeals exhausted, speculation arose regarding the possibility of Donald's lawyers elevating the petition to the federal court system. However, at the time of this research, there was no information available on this matter. What is known is that Donald remains confined in a maximum security prison in Texas and will not be eligible for parole until 2030. Robbie's story serves as a painful reminder of the cruelty that can exist, as well as the incredible strength and courage of a boy who fought until the end. June 28th is commemorated as Robbie's Day, honoring his memory. As we conclude today's video, we reflect on the tragic case of a boy whose life was lost and who endured nearly 12 years of agony. He faced many challenges while striving to survive. Ultimately, justice was served, but the journey was undeniably painful not only for him but also for his family. In the end, Donald is in jail, likely facing a long sentence. Prison is notoriously harsh for individuals who commit the types of crimes he did, and it is for the best that he remains incarcerated, as he poses a threat to society. If you found this video informative, please leave a like and subscribe for updates, as we post 3 to 4 times a week. If you're subscribed, you'll receive a notification each time I upload a new video. I'll see you next time with another case. Goodbye.